councillors and staff. My name, as you know, is Andrew Cumming. I'm a principal planner at Road Group. Road Group acts on behalf of the landowner of Block 93, number 40, Hazelmere Circus in Hazelmere. And we make this deputation as an objection to the officer's recommendation item 13.3. We request that council do not support the officer's recommendation of the proposed structure plan in its entirety. As a minimum, we request that the structure plan be placed on hold until meaningful engagement has occurred with all landowners to confirm the intent of the structure plan, location of zones and infrastructure, program and funding for infrastructure, compensation arranged for road reservations identified, and importantly, who or whom is acting as the applicant. Our client's property is the southernmost lot in the structure plan area. During the public consultation period undertaken previously by the city in 2022, Road Group lodged a submission objecting to the proposed structure plan for the following reasons. 1. There has been a lack of early engagement that is not consistent with best practice for the preparation and assessment of structure plans, particularly that the structure plan proposed a road directly through the...
Sorry, can I have a little bit less talking in the chambers? Or if I can hear you talking, other people can hear you talking. Thank you, please continue.
Thank you. Particularly that the structure plan proposed a road directly through the existing improvements on our client's property. 2, the alignment of the proposed roads is not consistent with those contemplated within the overarching Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan, will result in fragmented and constrained land parcels and is not fair and equitable. 3, the structure plan lacks detail on how the delivery of infrastructure will be equitably distributed amongst the structure plan area and details regarding compensation. And the designation, 4, the designation of residential land not being consistent within the context of the locality in terms of proximity to Perth Airport. We note that as of June 2022, the City and Council had the following position in regard to the structure plan. This matter was deferred at the Ordinary Council meeting held on 1 June 2022 to the Ordinary Council meeting to be held on 3rd of August 2022 for the Hazelmere Progress Association to facilitate a public meeting and the applicant to provide an up-to-date traffic impact assessment. Subsequent to the deferral of this item at the 1 June 2022 Ordinary Council meeting, the City was advised that the applicant who lodged the structure plan had ceased to act as the owner of Lot 651, whom had sold Lot 651 to another party. The new owner advised the City on 5th of July 2022 that they did not wish to act as the applicant in advancing the proposed structure plan, but that they were selling the land and could not speak to the intentions of the potential buyer. City staff had discussed these circumstances with staff at the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage and agreed that the proposed structure plan should be held in abeyance unless a landowner is prepared to act as an applicant. We have previously liaised with the City in March 2023, and at this point there was no known change to the above stance. Subsequent to this, in late May 2023, we advised that the structure plan was to be presented to the June Council meeting with a recommendation to submit it for final approval to the West Australian Planning Commission. We were made aware of this after submission of a development application of a portion of our client's property and a subsequent email from the City to our client. Having regard to the reasons for deferral at the 1 June 2022 Council meeting and the resolution from the City to hold the structure plan in abeyance, we note the following. Our client did attend the Hazelmere Progress Association public meeting. However, in our view, this cannot be construed as a meaningful engagement on the structure plan. Our client is of the view the meeting was held to notify landowners the structure plan was not progressing. In this way, it was mainly a forum for briefing on the current status and what needed to occur should it move forward, rather than an opportunity to hear landowners' views and seek to address these concerns. Based on the report presented to Council, it is unclear if an up-to-date traffic impact assessment has been procured or supplied. And 3, we are aware that an applicant for the structure plan has not been identified.
Yeah, 1 minute, thank you.
Just finishing up. Given these facts, we question why the structure plan is being progressed at this time. Further, and following a review of the officer's report to Council, we note the following. Perth Airport has a number of landowners that have objected to the location of the additional residential land in this location. We also note the previous applicant acknowledged these concerns as prepared to remove this designation and for a wall to be located on this common boundary. Fundamentally, the proposition of residential in this land in this location to act as a buffer or transition area to existing residential land will not serve a proper planned purpose. 2, and finally, it's important to note that Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan was endorsed prior to the Gazette of the current state planning policy dealing with noise from aircraft, and therefore any comment on this staff report there is a need to be consistent with the above mentioned structure plan does not recognise this distinct land use planning framework and the objective of this policy framework to avoid residential land uses within its application area. In summary, the proposed structure plan will result in sterilisation of our client's land and the land to the north of our client's property, which was a distinct matter the original Hazelmere area structure plan sought to avoid. As a consequence, and on behalf of our client, we object to the structure plan progressing any further and request that it not be pursued at this time. Thank you for your time, and I'm available to take any questions.
Thank you. I allowed you to go slightly over, but I knew you didn't have long to go. Question, Councillor Catalano?
Yes, thank you. Firstly, can I ask that you send me a copy of your deputation, and if you wouldn't mind putting your phone number in there as well? Great, thank you. I'll have a chat with you about it. The other thing is that, can you work out who the proponent is in this application? Because I believe that proponent that's in the application is deceased.
That's what I've been made aware of in my
Do you have
mind.
any further information?
As far as I'm aware, and I won't, maybe it's a question for the
I
city.
will ask
Yeah,
her, but I want
yeah,
you to know
there's
anything
no
about that.
applicant, as Arnold made aware of by the city, but also as far as the reporting that stands in front of you, I don't believe there's an applicant active as the applicant.
Okay, great. Oh, well, I'll look forward to getting your email. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Johnson?
This is a question for staff. It seems a bit of a strange situation.
Well, just before we go on, are there any more questions for Mr. Cooney before we go to staff questions? No more questions for Mr. Cooney, then I thank you for your attendance and your deputation. Councillor Johnson, you have a question for staff?
Should I circulate my statement to all councillors rather than
If
just
you can
one?
email all
Yeah.
councillors, we'll all have the same information.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. So during Mr. Cummins' deputation, it became clear, I guess, please, to everyone's in the room surprised that there isn't an applicant or a proponent, even though we've got stateless planning and proponent Howard Reginald Hazelhurst. So if this gentleman is dead, how can he make a planning application? So something that's not difficult.
Mr. Russell?
Through Mr. Mayor, I must have missed something. Who suggested we would speak?
But can you turn the microphone on?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I must have missed that.
I believe there is a suggestion that the applicant may have passed away.
That may be true enough, Mr. Mayor. The salient point though is that the point in which there was no longer an active applicant was the point in which this deceased gentleman had sold the land to the current registered proprietor, TIAA Proprietary Limited. And Statewest is the applicant that acted for this gentleman, is no longer acting for the new owner. So the peculiar situation is it is possible for two things to happen. That any registered proprietor of land subject to this proposed structure plan may adopt the role of proponent advancement, and that includes Mr. Cummings' client, or the city as the local authority may adopt the role of proponent advancement. But in any event, there is nothing in the regulation having had an application or structure plan that's submitted. It's usually at the behest of the registered proponent, the applicant to withdraw it, which has not been done, unless someone else takes that role to withdraw it. And we've presented this on the basis that the council may, in the ordinary course, make its recommendation to the Commission, and the Commission will determine one way or the other. But if there's no one driving, it's safe to say that it is most unlikely that the application, particularly if it requires modifications, it's unlikely that it's going to advance. But administratively, it has the council fulfilling its obligation to make a recommendation to the Commission within the prescribed timeframe.
So if he was still alive, he might have wanted to withdraw it, to modify it. So if he's dead, he can't withdraw it. So I don't understand how he can propose it or withdraw it. It seems that it's changed owners, who's involved is dead. It shouldn't even be on the agenda. Is that right?
I think that's, are you asking that as a question, or you may?
It's a question. I can't understand how this situation could arise that we've got a dead applicant. Yeah. proponent, yeah, sorry, the applicant is
And
a
I think my understanding, Mr. Russell's answer to your last question, Councillor Johnson, is this is the way council has to deal with it to get it off our books, so to say. We forward it to the WAPC and they'll determine which way it goes. But we just can't leave it on our agenda forever.
But there's a question, can I ask you another, I know that the CEO has the power to withdraw items from the agenda, wouldn't it be appropriate for the CEO just to withdraw this item?
CEO?
Thank you. I think the issue, I asked that at the start today, once the statutory process is started, the clock ticks on, so the application has to be determined. And having been determined, I don't have the capacity to pull something where it's already a statutory process is underway. My understanding is we have exceeded the time on this marginally, and the Commission is also aware that the application is possibly from a proponent who no longer wishes to proceed with it. When I asked the question, the only way to move this off the books is for council to make a determination on and pass the matter to the Commission.
So I guess the question is, if he's dead, how would he take this to court if we didn't put it on the agenda? I don't understand this.
CEO or Mr. Russell?
Thank you. It's not so much just the process where the applicant, remember in this particular case, there is a live application, even though I potentially from the deceased person's live application, need to determine the application sits pursuant to the land. It's up to us to make a determination on it, or the Commission then make a resolution on it. Ultimately, it might never get taken up, but at least the matter will be determined by council and resolved one way or the other.
So we could make a recommendation that the WAPC ignore this application because proponent is dead, there's no executor or beneficiaries who appear to be interested in it. Is that a reasonable way forward if we have to progress it?
Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Picking up on Councillor Johnson's point in reverse, in my view, put it so succinctly, the council has a free hit. It's going to go unchallenged and whatever it might recommend. So, yes, council can resolve to see fit any which way make a recommendation. The Commission will need to determine it. The Commission may well say, well, we don't like it, or etc. We want to see some changes. If no one makes those changes, then we'll have an instrument that's never adopted. So it amounts to the same thing.
Just one more thing, Mr. Mayor. In the event that Mr. Hazel is not dead, I do apologise for suggesting he might be.
Councillor Bowman, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to Planning Director. If the statutory process is silent, Interpretation Act, does that not cover what's required here? And second part of that question is there any precedent of when a proponent dies of what a local government's done before?
I'm not aware of precedents in this regard. The basic problem that we as the city have is that because this application is due to council and the council deferred it at that time, it stays under point 13 under the agenda on a monthly basis as business left over from previous meetings. So to get rid of it from that perspective, we need to make a decision to, in some form of way, to get it to the Commission so that the Commission then basically kills the application at that point. But under the statutory requirements, we have to progress the application and make a recommendation to the Commission. I'm not aware of other legislation like interpretation that we haven't had a legal advice in that regard. We could go back and get that before the next council meeting.
Third question, Councillor Bowman.
Mr. Mayor, public parks, we have a policy that shouldn't be less than 4,000 square metres. However, on this occasion, officers are recommending one that's less than half the size. Why on this occasion is this reasonable for a public park to be less than half?
Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. we have an operational protocol in relation to what we say might be the appropriate size for a useful piece of public open space. And that, in no small part, is based on the acknowledgement that a lot in modern planning, best practice is to try and integrate areas of drainage into public open space. In this instance here, whilst we have something that is less than 4,000 square metres, it won't be constrained by any drainage. And to make up the balance of what is the 10% requirement for gross subdivision area of the structure plan, we, and the applicant has suggested this, or at least the previous applicant's document suggested this, that it is possible for us to look at whether it's appropriate to accept a cash in lieu for the balance, or some portion of it, that the council may then use in relation to the embellishment of other public open space in the locality, or to acquire other open space for all the normal arrangements that are open. So it is an operational requirement. It is not an absolute no. We need to look at proposals on their merits, and those merits, in this instance, were contemplated with respect to accepting in the structure plan an area of public open space less than 4,000 square metres.
May I follow-up question on that is, my understanding is that only 20% of public open space can actually be used for drainage, the rest has to be usable space. So that would be 80% of the 4,200 square metres. Yet again, staff are not recommending anything close to that. Why, when they have to provide a certain amount of size, is staff not recommending that? My follow-up question is, if we take cash in lieu, does that mean, which I understand the report says we can spend it on improving current public open space, does that mean then there's a deficiency in public open space in the area that will never actually be caught up again?
Mr. Russell?
Then, I'm trying to be a bit more succinct. The answer to the question, I think I asked the question previously as to why staff are prepared to recommend that we accept this public park. In relation now, and it's also worth noting, it does not mean that we can't have more than 20% of public open space area for drainage. All it means it's not creditable as creditable PLS. Okay, so it's important to make that distinction. In relation to, it's entirely open to council, for example, here, and this might be part of the reason why it might be beneficial for council to contemplate making a recommendation of this, and not letting it slide through the pit. Is if council is of the view, for example, that there ought to be more public open space than that 1,800 or 1,500 square metres, it may see fit to make that as a recommendation. And therefore it doesn't have, if it's of the view that, well, if you're going to have a residential area here, you've got to remember, the gross subdivisible area is for the whole of the area. If the council thinks it needs to be 4,000 square metres or doesn't want to depart from that, it's welcome to do that, of course. The question as to whether or not you'll be left with the deficiency of public open space is really going to depend on whether anyone's going to actually take up this structure plan to develop up the residential component for this area, noting that many of the landowners are probably not keen to follow the Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan and have the residential area on the western side of the buffer. So we might not ever get to a situation where there's additional residential development and you won't actually have any theoretical or actual public open space.
Mr. Mayor, my final question. Am I correct that in the Vines application, the fact that it was a detailed structure plan prevented the applicant from doing whatever they wanted to do, and with lacking a detailed structure plan, it gives it more flexibility to the applicant to, let's say, tweak changes from here to eternity?
Mr. Russell?
Mr. Mayor, I'm struggling to understand that question.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, detailed structure plans. If it's a detailed structure plan, it makes it a lot harder for changes in the future. Is that correct?
Not necessarily, Mr. Mayor. The question will always be whether the nature of the changes in line with the intent of the structure plan or otherwise. I mean, you might have a simple structure plan that's quite clear in its objectives to which a proposal to do something, develop the land may be inconsistent with it. But I think the important thing is, if and this is what a structure plan does, it's a guide to the intention in relation to the development and subdivision of land. So it can equally work. The question might be, well, can you develop land without a structure plan? Yes, you can under the scheme. The question is whether you're going to prejudice one. But if you have a structure plan, there's always more ready to ascertain whether a development or subdivision is in line with the intent than otherwise.
Yes, Mayor, my question was about detailed structure plans, not simple structure plans. My question was, because the vines have a detailed structure plan, did that prevent them from readily changing an item in their structure plan? And therefore, the follow-up question was, a detailed structure plan makes it less able for future changes. Is that correct?
I think any answer should be related to this proposed local structure plan and not to do the detailed structure plan rather than what the vines stands alone.
Mr. Mayor, I was making an example of one
I
detailed
understand.
structure plan. So I can take the vines out and say, if a local government accepts a detailed structure plan, does that make it harder for future changes, yes or no?
There's a couple of things, Mr. Mayor. For starters, there is no such thing as a detailed structure plan. There is a simple one in legislation. So I think we're proceeding on an erroneous basis and trying to draw a distinction. There is no such thing in the instrument. I think it's important to note, and I wouldn't use the vines as an example, because to be quite honest, the decision on the JF on the vines in relation to the structure plan issue is still open for review and may be subject to review. So if we're proceeding to try and make a decision, as you correctly noted, Mr. Mayor, we're proceeding to make a decision around whether or not the council should support the structure plan based on a conflation of a situation with another application, as you correctly pointed out. I think that's problematic.
Councillor Catalano, you are next.
Yes, thank you. Just curious, I'd actually like the information, which statutory requirements we're talking about, that this is required to go through to WPC? The actual statutory requirements.
Through Mr. Mayor, we're talking about the provisions of the planning development, local planning.
Yes, okay, which ones?
provisions.
Which ones specifically?
I haven't got the.
Oh,
provisions
would
in
you
relation
mind
to
sending
the
those to me?
Yep,
Because,
yep.
which provisions are we talking about that makes this essential? Because this is the first time we've heard about it.
Mr. Russell, take that question.
Yeah, last time it came to council, we didn't get this, idea that this has to be pushed through. So this is new information, so I'd like to know where these statutory requirements.
Provide that, Mr. Mayor.
And would you be able to provide that before the end of the week, please? So I have a chance to look it up.
Well, I can do one better than Mr. Mayor. I'll provide it when I get home in my computer.
Great, thanks very much.
Councillor
Oh, and actually, I've got a few more other questions. So is by any chance Hazelmere TIA a property proprietary limited driving this?
Well, that is the current registered proprietor.
Of,
It's the parties of the land to
which land is that?
the land of the so-called deceased gentleman. So the details in this land up the top, you look at the plan, the statement's all the big blue line at the top. So
Okay,
that, the proponent here was the previous owner.
okay, so they're driving it. And then the other question then is, so why did the community get the idea at consultation that this was never going to happen? Basically, the message I'm getting from the community is they were told the structure plan wouldn't go through, wouldn't come back before council. It was unlikely to happen. That was what the message was out there in the community at that meeting. I'm told.
Yeah, I'm in a position to tell you what was communicated at that meeting, because I was the one at the meeting.
Oh, great. Oh, that's good,
So
thanks.
you can get it straight from the horse's mouth. What we explained to them in relation to that meeting was twofold. One, there were questions in relation to the process of the structure plan, and all of what I've explained to the council here and discussed was explained to the attendees of the meeting, the Hazelmere Progress Association. There are other questions that were focused around the rationale for the provision of the road, related back to the Hasmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan and views around that. There are other views around that were expressed by some in relation to implications for other parts of their land Hasmere outside of the structure plan. So very simply what was communicated with these facts. One, that the land, the applicant, State West, that acted for the owners of a portion of this land, were no longer active because that owner had sold the land to someone else. And what we subsequently found, I endeavoured to contact and got hold of parties acting, agents acting for the registered proprietors of this new piece of land that had been acquired from the previous owner, that we're keen to progress. So I said the circumstances as it presents at the moment is there was no one driving this as an applicant. And two things can happen. Either another landowner that is subject to the structure plan may take it up and drive it, or the council may take it up and drive it. So if there's no one else, other owners that are interested in taking up and driving it, and the council is not inclined to do so, then going back to the point I made, the council, seemingly to my view, can make any recommendation that sees fit, goes to the commission, and then something will happen. But as Councillor Johnston correctly observed, a proposal that no one drives goes nowhere. And that all of that was discussed in frank terms with the proponents to say this might not happen for these.
Okay, right now, it's the council or is it PIA that's driving it? No one's driving it, so it's not going anywhere, but it's here in council and we've got to make a decision about it, even though no one's driving it. Not the council, not PIA.
Mr Mayor, let me be precise. If this council decides it doesn't want to make any decision, or wants to make any decision that it sees fit, it can do either or. As Mr Wunderlin has explained, as the Chair explained. The benefit is getting this off the books, not sitting there on the agenda. It's processed, we've done our bit, because at the end of the day, I suppose someone might say there is an obligation for the local government as part of these deed provisions and structure plans to make a call, yay, nay, or whatever, in advance. Otherwise, it's sitting there. Sure, a proponent could say, well, technically, it's a deed refusal. Someone else, any of these other owners, I suppose, could take it up. Mr Cummings' owners here conceivably, if I understand the law correctly, could take it up as a application that is being refused. I could be wrong, they might be able to do that. So we're only suggesting that, for whatever reason, make a recommendation, but it doesn't sound like anyone is going to actively oppose it in this process.
I'd like to just ask, when is the live streaming on?
I believe so.
Oh, okay, because people are saying at home that there's no live streaming.
Through you, Mayor, we have been advised that it's on.
It's on?
It's on.
Okay, great, thanks very much.
Unless it's gone off again.
Yeah, I think it's gone off because we're getting messages that it's gone off. And I mean, that's important information that Mr. Russ has just told us, that we don't have captured now.
I'm sure you can release it later to whoever is messaging you at this point in time.
It's easier to, if it's on live streaming.
We're
Thank
looking
you.
at it, we're trying to get it back on. Thank you. Are there any other questions, councillors?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is it a valid option for us to defer this item, given that there's no one driving it?
Through the chair, to the first time you have to defer it until a particular date, so you only just get item coming back. If they're making a decision one way or another, as Vandalin and Mr. Russell said, put it to the commission and leave the matter to the commission.
Can we defer it until a owner makes themselves known, takes ownership and says, please will you do something with this council?
I couldn't quite hear you, Councillor Johnson.
Instead of deferring it to a date, can we defer it until an event occurs, and that event is that a proponent asks for it to be put back on the agenda because they wish to pursue it.
Well, he's been on the agenda for 12 months or more.
It's been deferred, so if we defer it again until such a time as a proponent wishes to progress it, is that reasonable?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I might suggest we'll take legal advice on it, but the issue is, the actress, if it's already deemed refused, then that would sit otherwise give advice to the commission that it's past the statutory period. If council determined deemed refused, the commission can deal with the matter anyway. We'll come back to you just in terms of, I certainly wouldn't think just leave it in limbo forever is a good idea.
There's no more questions, I'll ask the next deputation to come forward. Now, as originally advised, it's going to be Simon Ashby, but I believe Lynn Beering will now be the next speaker. Thank you, Lynn. I hope you've heard all that's gone on for you, and you have 5 minutes to make a deputation. Thank you, and start by turning your microphone on. Thank you
Good
very
evening,
much.
councillors. I'm responding to item 13.3 in regard to the proposed local structure plan for Hazelmere. I represent Woodbridge ratepayers this evening, and I will refer to Woodbridge ratepayers as RA. RA do not support the conditional approval of the proposal for local structure plan for Hazelmere. We request council to work more closer with this developer and seek proper, acceptable and appropriate development, in this way achieving a better outcome than what is presented in this proposal. Our grounds for not supporting this proposal are due to inappropriate use, industrial expansion and a new unnecessary heavy road network which is already catered for by Lloyd Street Bridge extension. Noise problems do not go away. Evidence of this being an issue was clearly identified by Perth Airport in their strong objection, highlighting the land proposed to be developed for residential is within a 25-30 contour. Yet the standards, LPS 17, Schedule 12, and AS 2021, this is considered unacceptable for residential. Safety. This proposal creates freight roads through residential and directly in front of an existing Steiner school and brings RAV4, RAV7 within the walk to area of Woodbridge Primary. Now we understand what a RAV7 is, don't we? We're talking about a 3-length freight train, right? Not a little vehicle. Loss of amenity and impact upon the nature reserve corridor. As specified in the Hazelmere Enterprise Area Structure Plan, this proposal removes a nature corridor, taking this away, and proposes building in the buffer zone next to homes. Broader local impact due to traffic flow and redirection. Where is the traffic coming from and going to in this proposal? Long-term negative impact to existing residents and future residents, their health and livability. There are well-documented and known health and safety environmental issues associated with service stations and heavy-duty traffic through residential areas. An example of this can be found with reference to the Claremont Town Council, who rejected and has rejected several proposals along with Stirling and other councils based on the location of garages and refuelling depots. This is proposing a refuelling depot opposite Trillion Trees beside the Helena River in what is a residential area. RA residents and RA members are familiar with the area proposed, very familiar, because it lines alongside our Woodbridge area. So an invisible line drawn on a map. This proposal is out of step with what is needed and raises more questions about local planning, the application of structure plans, and the future direction for Woodbridge, Hazelmere, Guildford and Midland. Our members cannot understand why our council have created good standard residential areas. That attracted people to come and live in England, and are now sitting about destroying the very livability that exists, allowing industry and traffic alongside residential areas. Why? I say this without exaggeration. Now, in your documents, you will have on page 38 a map. It looks,
You have 1 minute left, thank you.
it looks like this. Very clearly, when you're looking at this, please understand, this is a map, it is a diagram, these are houses. What you are doing is allowing houses alongside a new road network, alongside a light industrial area, beneath a flight path, right? Okay? And Road 7, vehicles being driven past them. Is this acceptable? Since when does anyone want to open their front door to the smell of resin or so forth, the noise of 36 8-metre RAV4-7s braking and turning, and daily sound and vibrations of aircraft? I ask councillors, read through the documents sent and consider the diagrams that you will have in front of you. This proposal raises more questions than it would seem to have been considered if guiding this development and applying for a structural plan. Council, you should not recommend this project. It is costly, not required, and destructive to community and natural habitat. It subjects new owners and residents to unnecessary risk. It allows financial gain to developers before they move on elsewhere. Council is left liable to the consequences, legal, safety, moral and environmental, in not following agreed policies by endorsing this decision. And I can supply 4 other acts that you are not compliant with, or this proposal is not compliant with.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
I was just about to say that. Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
So, yeah, my question is, then what are the 4 other acts?
Sorry?
What are the 4 other things that it's not compliant with?
State Planning Policy 4.1, Industrial Interface, 1997 and 2022, buffer zones. Local Planning Scheme 17, 2023, rezoning, R codes and noise. Hazelmead Enterprise Structure Plan 2011, ecological corridor and buffer zones. Australian Standard 2021 to 2015, acoustic, aircraft noise.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Catalano.
Thanks, could you send those to me, email them to me? Yeah, great, thanks.
Thank you. Please read our proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. That takes us to the next item, part B of the agenda, councillors. Item 4.1, the responsible authority for proposed tavern and shops, lot 469 Scuddy Street, Brabham. It's on page 304 of your agenda. In-person deputation from Brett Miles, not supported the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Brett. Once you start speaking, you'll have 5 minutes, and I'll try and advise you when you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Brett Miles. I'm a occupational therapist who has worked in child development for over a decade. So I don't have a planning background, so I won't be able to answer any questions on planning, I'm sorry. But I'm presenting today to oppose the recommendation for the proposed tavern and shops on Scuddy Street. And I'm speaking not just as a healthcare professional who's worried about the adverse risk of alcohol exposure to children, with the proposal being attached to a daycare and directly opposite a primary school. But I'm also speaking as someone who lives on Scuddy Street, where the tavern is being proposed to be built. And I'm speaking as a parent of a 2-year-old child who will be directly impacted by the tavern being built. Now, when we bought the block of land in 2020, we were advised that the proposed site for the tavern was going to be a medical centre, and we agreed to buy the block of land with that in mind, only to be, once you wait 2 years for the house to be built and then informed that it was going to then be a tavern, removing our choice or agency over, our ability to live near a tavern and the associated consequences. Now, with this particular proposal, there have been some reports that have been made in terms of the investigations surrounding noise and the impact of noise on the community. And I really want to highlight that I don't believe that those reports are accurate in terms of there being no impact for a tavern to the community in relation to noise. With where the tavern is proposed to be, there aren't very many noise cancelling trees or structures around at this stage. And there are quite a ways away from being built and for those trees lopping up. So if there's a house party streets away, we can hear the echo of the bass, and it's something that can cause my child to wake who goes to bed at 7 o'clock. Now, if we look at the tavern and their proposed noise kind of restrictions they're going to be putting in place, they're going to be turning down the noise from 10 o'clock, which is just not acceptable. That risk of that bass coming through and the noise coming through and the traffic of the people coming through right up until 10 o'clock, that's something that my child can potentially hear and will be waking and causing sleep disturbances there. We're looking at a tavern that's going to be serving drinks from 10 o'clock, which means that drinks are going to be served while there are children with a wall directly opposite a wall that is shared with the daycare centre. There's also drinking happening while school is going to be proceeding through the week. Now, if we look at the fact that alcoholism and exposure to alcohol is a massive issue in Australia. In fact, it doesn't take much research to bring up something like the Australian Bureau of Statistics and look at the fact that 1 in 4 Australians currently exceed the recommended alcohol guidelines, and that there are tons of research articles out there, and as I was doing research for this, some of the government websites have actually listed research articles and quoted research articles where they're talking about child exposure to alcohol in parents increasing their risk of drinking and associated drinking behaviours in the future. We're looking at children inadvertently being exposed to drinking without parents having a choice to do so. It is one thing for a parent to have a choice to take their child to take their child to a pub and expose them to drinking, but another thing for a parent to take their child to daycare and take their child to school and for them to have a tavern across the road and see drinking and see people walking out drunk and associated behaviours. We also have a lot of building and trades on site and so trades in the area. So there is an increased risk of builders knocking off work, going to the tavern and drinking there, and the associated drunk driving in the area as well. So I'm sorry I've gone a little bit over time there, but thank you for allowing me to present my concerns.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for your deputation, Brad. What's the traffic like there at the moment? Is that an issue?
Yeah, so there are works that are happening on Palfrey Street at the moment, which actually the works are coming out and jutting out onto Palfrey Street, which means people are often having to drive very carefully along Palfrey Street. And if there's an increase in traffic and there's an increase in speeding, then there's an increase in risk for traffic accidents. What I also want to say is that at this point in time, Scottish Street is also a means for quite a bit of the Avonlea community, a quiet community that is family centred on our street. Over half the people are young families like myself who will be negatively impacted by this. but there are quite a few people who just zoom through that street. And if we increase the traffic through having a pub, we increase the amount of people potentially hooning through there. And I'm aware that if the medical centre would have popped up, that still would have been the case. However, there's a different demographic that goes to a tavern at different times of day as well. So it would be more regular and past a general closing hour for something like a medical centre or a cafe.
Okay, thank you. And just, so you'd be happy with a medical centre, something like that was what you originally thought you were buying into?
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal world, if you look at, if people take a detailed look at Bradman Primary School and the demographics of the area and how the demographics are changing with more and more young families building and moving out to Bradman Primary School has actually had to build an enormous amount of demand schools just to keep up with demand. So in an ideal world, depending on education department funding, would love to see that area sold to education department to build like a kindy there or Bosch Club or something like that. But I think a cafe there, an adult friendly cafe would be very, very appropriate. There's a lot of people who take walk their dogs at the park in the area and just having that opportunity to grab a coffee with their dog or do school drop off and grab a coffee rather than a beer would be very appropriate. I also want to highlight on that comment that if you look at the amount of Facebook comments in relation to this as well in support of the tavern, there's a lot of comments about people drinking and then stumbling home, and I just want to highlight that is a massive risk in terms of antisocial behaviour in the community that we don't want those young children at the school exposed to.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Bone?
Thank you, both. Thanks for the invitation. Just carrying on from that, what's the parking like in the area currently?
Not great. So we've got a lot of overflow. There's a lot of concerns with parking that are raised in the Bradman groups, and I know a lot of parents kind of overflow onto other streets, and there's issues with parking on top of the curbs and that kind of thing. Yeah.
And your verges, big verges there or small verges?
Smaller verges, I believe.
And your driveway, you can fit 2 cars in the driveway as well without hanging over the footpath?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
You mentioned you've got a 2-year-old. Do you use childcare facilities yourself, or do you have friends that use childcare facilities?
Yeah, I do use childcare facilities. Yeah.
So you can answer my question, because mine have grown up a bit.
Mm-hmm.
What's a busy time to pick up kids these days? So childcare is in the afternoon when you pick up the kids. What's the average time that most of the kids get picked up?
From daycare?
Yeah.
Yeah, about 4:30, and dropped off at, I usually drop my son off at 7.
So 4:30 and go all the way up to what time in childcare? 6?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, thank you. I've got questions at the start, but I'm going on deputation.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Johnson?
Just a question as to how near you actually live. So you're on Scottish Street,
I do live on Scottish Street.
You're directly opposite the
No, I'm not directly opposite the tavern. I am a bit closer to, York Street, I think it's called.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions, councillors? Then I thank you for your deputation coming along tonight, Brett, and answering questions. The next person speaking on the same item is Jordan Busher from Resolve in support of the recommendation. Thank you, Jordan. Once you start speaking, you also have 5 minutes.
Thanks very much. So my printer broke just prior to coming, so you've got to bear with me here. My name's Jordan Busher. I represent Resolve Group. I'm the principal planner there. Firstly, I'd like to thank the council for allowing us to provide a deputation with regards to the Responsible Authority report for the tavern and drive-through liquor store at lot 469 Scottish Street in Bradman. It's been very briefly touched on, but I think I'll just provide a little bit of contextual history on the site. 2019, the owner, Robert Mitrovic, received an approval for a medical centre, a small supermarket, pharmacy, and a small kiosk to be constructed at the subject site. Further to this, the owner received a subsequent approval on December 2021 for the use and development of a childcare facility with the associated car parking areas, access, landscaping, and civil works. The current proposal seeks to maintain that childcare centre just to the north, while utilising some of the built form as approved in the 2019 DA. In terms of our proposal, at the very least, we're providing an overall site access upgrades, site lighting, extensive planting and landscaping, which we thank the city for their cooperation for. I mean, I'll admit the original proposal was pretty lean on in terms of landscaping. We're really pleased now to be able to say that we're proposing over 33 significant and/or advanced trees on the site. And those of you that have been out there would know and be able to attest to the heat island effects around that immediate vicinity. We're also constructing a 1,200 square metre tavern, inclusive of a 190 square metre alfresco area and a bottle shop. We're modifying and constructing all parking bays, ingress and egress from the subject site, and as well as the internal site movement network, and constructing pedestrian pathways to and from the establishments, and have done extensive consultations in the form of traffic engineers, disability access consultants and the like. I just briefly touched on it, but we do want to thank the city for the opportunity to attend 3 of the design review panel meetings to work through the designs where it is today. Like I mentioned, it was originally a far less landscaped and a bit more of a bulky commercial site, to the point where it is today that you would have all seen the plans. In terms of our focus has always been to provide a local landmark to service a local catchment area, being a high proportion of families in the Brabham vicinity, and we really feel as though that's been achieved with the final set of drawings. The final plans arrived at a pedestrian-friendly development where the user experience is enhanced through a really densely vegetated and walkable site with high-quality built form. Following on from that, I do really want to stress that this is not some sort of dilapidated dive bar. This is a high-quality family dining venue. The future operators of the Brabham Tavern have a impeccable track record of running family-friendly taverns and venues, and we're really confident in the venue programming and community-centric nature of their business model, and we're really, like I said, confident that this will greatly benefit the local community. As part of the project team's due diligence, we had a hospitality consultant come on board, and prior to lodging the application, we actually undertook extensive community consultation in addition to the city's consultation. And we're really pleased that of the 478 respondents that were surveyed within a 3-kilometre immediate radius of the subject site, 82% said yes to the question, do you feel a family-friendly tavern such as the one proposed here is required? And I must stress that they'll provide the original. And obviously we've seen the city's consultation come back with over 65% positive feedback from that as well. Lastly, just want to thank the city's assessing officers, Patricia Hurst, who I believe now has left the city, Chris Fudge, and lastly Phil Russell for their collaborative assistance on the project. It's been a very long process, but we're really pleased that we're where we've arrived to, and really supportive of the city's recommendations. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman, you first.
Thank you. Where do you propose everyone's going to park? Providing 44 parking bays on site itself for 400 people.
Yeah, so our traffic consultants have determined that a peak capacity, which is not going to be at 400, their modelling predicts it to be about 85% of that. The local walkable catchment area provides sufficient off-street bays, on-street bays, and we've also got a reciprocal arrangement with the childcare, given that they operate at different times. So that's embedded in both the leases between the tavern and childcare. So
you didn't answer my question. Where do you think they're all going to park? So you're saying 85% of 400, which is about what, 360, 350, 2 people per person in a vehicle is 175. I'm still trying to work out where the other 100 people, 100 vehicles going to park.
Yeah, sure.
You're assuming 63%, 64% are going to walk to the pub?
All what we found with the hospitality consultation is that a high proportion of people will be servicing a local catchment, so they'll actually be attending the site by foot or via rideshare services. Your assumption that everyone will be attending the site by vehicle is proven to be incorrect. So we're really confident that we'll be able to service the vehicle.
So the figures roughly I've done, you're assuming 63% when you're at 85 capacity is going to walk there. Is that what you're assuming?
I'm not sure on those figures and the numbers. I'm happy to look into it for you further and provide a more detailed response if you'd like.
With reciprocal parking, if I'm picking up my child from the daycare, will I be able to park in the drive-through old shop, get out of the car, walk over and leave my car?
Yeah, so the childcare bays will be allocated for childcare attendees throughout their entire operation of the day. So their pick up and drop off periods in particular. So yes. Yes, we will be able to.
So my question is, staff are counting the six car parking bays when you drive through Bowl Shop, and you've got reciprocal parking rights. So will I be able to park my car in the drive-through Bowl Shop, not get alcohol, but walk over and get my child? Because that's what reciprocal parking, my understanding.
So your question is that the someone attending a childcare would park in the drive-through and pick up their child?
Can I?
The reciprocal arrangement is reciprocal in the sense that it provides parking to the tavern use. The childcare use is a compliant parking quota, so I mean, theoretically, there wouldn't be stopping anyone doing that in that instance. So.
Councillor Colvin, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Busher. You've already answered one of my questions, which was the importance of the community surveys and 82% saying yes. Has any dialogue taken between you and or your client with the school?
Yes, thank you for raising that. We've got both written support from the board and the principal of the school across the road, which we're obviously really thrilled about. And I forgot to mention that the future tenants of the childcare who have signed on have also provided their support for the proposal.
And can you tell me, has there been any dialogue with the planning minister? The old planning minister, not the new planning minister?
Yes, as of last week, planning minister, we have entered into discussions with the minister. Unfortunately, I'm actually not sure where that's at as of this week, given the role change. But I can confirm.
Was there support from that minister for this?
There is an issue. There is support there. We haven't got anything in writing just yet to be able to provide you, so I can't provide anything on the record, but I will do so in due time.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Busher. Of the consultation that occurred, do you have any of the original feedback and comments from the community, or was that a survey that was undertaken and just the results correlated?
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you can give councillors to show that support from the community?
Yeah, but then so the city's undertaken their own consultation, which has provided a majority support from the community. But in terms of the one we undertook before, is that so? I'll have to double check from a privacy perspective whether because we weren't actually even provided the details of each participant. We only got the whole numbers, which I'm more than happy to provide. It was provided as part of the original development application package. Yeah, I'm more than happy to circulate that.
And do you have that copy from the written support from the school's principal as well, that you can distribute to councillors?
Yes, and the city has that as well.
Thanks.
Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Busher, during your deputation, you said that it was a child-friendly facility. Besides being next to a childcare facility, can you tell me what are the child-friendly features of the town?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've got obviously a child play area within the alfresco area. I'm not sure you can see that in your floor plan. It would be there in the northwestern corner, eastern corner, sorry. And it's also a large crux of this comes down to how the venue is actually programmed and what sort of nights you're having. Are you having what you would see at a rural tavern, or are you having what you would see at a tavern which is located in an area which is densely populated by families? So happy to go into details and provide you a full schedule of each night and what would be proposed from a programming perspective.
Well, thank you, Fiona. Yes, I can see on page 323, as you say, the North East Kids Playground. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Singh, you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to know what's the operational hours, what time openings and what times the tavern going to be closed on the night and the weekends as well.
Yes, that is a good question. So we were working through that with the city, and the city, as part of their responsible authority report to the JADA, has provided a trading hour. So from a bottle shop point of view, they are not permitted to operate after 8 p.m. or prior to 8 a.m. Deliveries to the site not before 7 or after 7. In terms of the tavern, I believe that's conditioned, but I'll have to double check, and that'll be subject to our licensing application, which is currently pending as well.
Yep, I need all the information and the weekends also, everything else on the weekends.
Yeah, no worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Catalano, you're next.
Thank you. Where's the nearest tavern located to this site?
So we have, that's a good question. Not actually in this area, that's difficult. I'd have to double check that for you. I know our hospitality consultants went through a thorough assessment of that.
Councillor.
Okay, just with the parking, the childcare users parking in the tavern, it seems a bit odd if it's the tavern that's going to be short of parking bays. I can't see it's reciprocal. I think it's more like,
Yeah, I agree.
people canting into the childcare rather than the childcare, because if you haven't got enough bays, so that seems to be what that really is all about. It's not really reciprocal at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're.
Clarifying that.
Yeah, sure. That's a requirement of the city. The parking bays provided, we would have liked to have provided less tavern parking bays. And we less parking bays, yes.
No, but the problem is you don't have enough.
No, but we would have liked to have probably attributed more elsewhere, as opposed to.
How do you mean attributed more elsewhere?
More to the north of the site would have been preferred for the childcare, and hence why we did.
No, sorry, don't. So you've got the tavern.
Yeah.
It doesn't have enough parking. So how could you have less?
So it hasn't got enough parking to the city's ratio, which is 1 bay per 4 square metres of gross floor area.
Yeah.
So you're attributing parking spaces for bikes, storage, storerooms, and other areas. We initially proposed a much significant, a greater shortfall of parking. So that's what I mean.
Why did you think about that when you know that parking's a premium in Bradford?
No, but our original proposal and feedback from our traffic survey and parking survey on the site was that we could actually propose less parking. But through the DRP, we've actually scaled back the development quite considerably and added more parking.
Okay, all right. Okay, so just got a question for staff about trading hours.
Councillor Knight, you're next.
Thank you, Jordan. You said in your deputation you had support from the school, but here in the report, it would seem to be at odds with the Department of Education. What do you make of that?
I'm as confused as you are.
Okay, all right. There's also a deputation from Taylor Burrell Burnett that came in today. They're acting on behalf of the Ariella estate, the owners of the Ariella estate, and they're opposed to this as well. As is the council. So I just wonder why a tavern was going in here, and what happened to the medical centre.
Oh yeah, the medical centre, unfortunately, it just was not feasible in the end. The owner had several proponents fall through, and the feedback was that it's uneconomic to proceed with the medical centre there. There's also medical centres nearby, which has made it more difficult. Unfortunately, it came down to feasibility of the project.
And there was nothing else that could have gone on the site that would have been acceptable, that might have been acceptable for the community.
We see this as a huge addition to the community. Like our feedback has been extremely positive from the local community members, and we see this as a great meeting point, a great local landmark for the Braddon community, and especially young families.
Yeah, I don't disagree with, it does have widespread support in Braddon because they don't have anything there, but I just think it's the wrong, it's an inappropriate location, that's all. If it's down in the jungle park, it would be.
You can argue that next week.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of, Jason? Then I thank you for your attendance, your deputation answering questions. We now have questions of staff from Councillor Catalano. You are first.
Thanks everyone, appreciate it.
Thank you. So, no,
It's okay, I did what I asked the question, but it's okay. You go back to where you go.
I'll take them in the order that I've done it. I've done it all night. Councillor Catalano indicated that she asked her last question. She indicated she had questions of staff.
So did I after I did the deputation, but it's okay, Mr. Mayor. You're the time member.
Well, I don't mind who asked the question first. You sort it out amongst yourselves.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask, Mr. Russell. Do we know what the trading hours of this tavern is going to be? Got any ideas what the conditions are in terms of trading hours?
Through Mr. Mayor, the city has not imposed a condition, but I'll say this. As Mr. Bush has alluded to, I would expect the Department of Liquor, Racing and Gaming to apply a standard. This might depend on how frequently you might be exposed to frequently licensed premises standard. Operating hours, midnight. And on Sundays, 10 p.m. So we have deliberately left off the conditions on the trade of this premises, comfortably in the knowledge that the Department of Racing, Gaming and Liquor are best placed, and they apply a public interest test in the consideration of liquor licenses. The best place to consider what the appropriate opening and closing hours are.
So what time are they going to open?
12 p.m.
12 p.m.
And on Sundays,
Midnight.
Mr. Mayor, as we're still an old-fashioned country in that respect, for the most part, 10 p.m.
Right.
And if you apply for an extended trading permit, as some premises do,
Yeah.
if they're accommodating most frequently late night sporting events that are televised in pubs, in other time zones, they may operate till 2 p.m.
2 p.m. All right.
Okay, in some instances till 3 p.m. Some places
You mean
they go 5 in the morning.
It means AM. Yes.
AM.
You mean AM. And the other question is, do you know where the nearest tavern is to this proposed tavern?
I think there is none in Braddon. I think Councillor Knight might have said the Brook might be the nearest.
The book in any book. Okay. All right. And
Beaches Tavern.
who's it close? Beaches Tavern and Beach Bar, not Swan Valley.
It's only within the suburb of Braddon.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
it is a dry suburb.
Okay. No worries.
You finished, Councillor Catalano? Councillor Bowman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the CEO, can I ask, were all councils provided the same information, or were some councils provided additional information in regards to the site?
Not specifically aware which councils can provide what information, so I can't inform.
So my understanding is any item on the agenda, all councils get the same information. It's to the best of the CEO's knowledge, is that still happening on this item?
Through the chair. The information to be provided in the agenda is consistent for all councillors. If an individual elected member have asked a question of a member of staff, they may have received an individual response, but as far as I recall, got the same information.
And Mr. Mayor, through you to the CEO, when councillors ask questions on the agenda, is it not good governance to provide the answer to all councillors? So they're all fully informed of the same information?
Thank you. Not necessarily individual councils with individual interests. Some read the material thoroughly and ask lots of questions. Others read the material and are satisfied with the advice that's there.
Mr. Mayor, my next question to the planning staff. The parking requirements is 400, obviously, old, outdated model. Then goes down to 120. Is it normal to have such a reduction in parking for a tavern?
Mr. Russell? Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. In fact, in my time here, for very good reasons, I've never recommended this council not once apply the scheme standard that we have, which is one space for every 2 square metres of bar area. We've recognised that the standards that we have are actually not relevant in 2023 or even 2020 with respect to the actual parking demand, not just for taverns, but a range of uses. So the answer to that question, we have absolutely, from a professional point of view, I have always preferred rationally the application of the same standard that we apply to a restaurant industry. 1 bay for every 4 persons. 1 bay for every 4 persons. Because in 2023, Mr. Mayor, in my experience, there is no difference or very little difference between often places that are restaurants and places that are taverns.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask my question in a different way because it hasn't been answered. As I indicated, I understand we don't use the current system. We use the restaurant, which is 120 parking bays, as opposed to 400, as opposed to 360 car parking bays. 120 parking bays, the applicant's only proposing 44 car parking bays, knowing 25 of them are already provided on site. There's 6 that have been counted through the drive-through where people are going to park and do whatever. So of the 120 parking bays, under a restaurant calculation, is it normal to provide such a reduction in the number of parking bays this applicant is suggesting to provide?
Mr. Russell,
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to take all councils to benefit of the detailed breakdown of parking. I'm going to quote. Okay? So, if I take you to page, the 15th page, okay, where it talks about City of Swan car parking landscaping standards. And I take you down to the first, second, third, fourth, fifth paragraph. Okay? And the salient sentence in there, this would render accessible car parking to 110 spaces. Okay? That is 110 spaces. Okay? So that is what that is. So the rationale for the reduction is stepped through in terms of the total number of bays, that is bays that are provided exclusively on site for the tavern, bays that may be used, that is the childcare premises bays that are also available, the bays that are available on the surrounding road network, the 25 odd bays, and the 6 bays in relation to the drive-through. And that gets you such that when you add all that up, the shortfall was something like about, this would render the proposed development requiring 120 bays and the accessible car parking to 110, all inclusive. So what are we dealing with there? 10 bay shortfall. We add it all up in the columns, for and against, that is the scope of the difference. So I would say, as I hope that the articulation of the car parking report may explain, there is not, when you add it all up, applying those parameters, a great disparity in what the scheme would say in terms of the amount for 1 for every 4, and what you have with respect to what is being provided as a total package. On-site exclusive to the tavern, on-site incorporating access to the child premises parking, the surrounding 25 bays, and the 6 in the hole being the 6 in the drive-through, and that's where we get 110 versus 120. That's the disparity, Mr. Mayor. It's not significant.
Mr. Mayor, my next question is it correct that this application only is going to provide 44 car parking bays on site not including the 6 car parking bays that are apparently car parking bays in the drive-through bottle shop facility. Yes or no will be fine.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
I will choose, Mr. Mayor, respectfully, I'll answer it this way. The application
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
proposes provision
I've
of
asked you a
79
yes or no
car parking
question.
bays on site.
Mr. Russell, you just answer yes or no, which is what councillor Bowman has asked. Thank you. You got any other questions, councillor Bowman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, so it's not 44 car parking bays that this applicant is specifically providing for this application. How many is it on site?
Mr. Russell, thank you.
79 designated car parking bays. Okay, that's inclusive of the 25. So 79 minus 25, that gets you to 44. But as we've added up here, the total car parking patch calculation is based on all those elements I've indicated. But 44, if you wanted to say how many only, 4 being provided by the tavern, 44 on site, yes, that's what you would get.
Any other questions, councillor Bowman? Councillor Johnson, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, my question is, I see it's on page 318 on the noise. It says that the environmental noise assessment prepared by Lloyd George Acoustics. That assessment identified the proposed development will generate noise levels that exceed the EPA regulations, and then I think the staff are recommending measures to mitigate against this. And these have been included, I believe, in the conditions on page 308. So we've got condition 7, acoustic wall, 8, tavern building will be constructed with external glass with a high acoustic rating, a roof and metal deck above the sides of the ceiling that acoustic covering, internal carpeting, 2.7 metre tall plexiglass wall around the alfresco area, and a noise management plan. So just asking Mr. Russell, is that going to be sufficient to eliminate any noise concerns of the people living on City Road and surrounding areas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Look, I think it's important to note there's 2 things around that. You may implement a package of measures in line with the acoustic signs that will say, from any given sensitive receiver, you should not be generating noise levels in excess of the regs. I think it's important to note that doesn't necessarily mean, or it certainly doesn't mean, that nearby residents may not hear noise. And it doesn't mean that nearby residents may well be, as Mr. Miles has articulated, unhappy with such noise. All it means is it's a measure against whether or not you meet or comply with or exceed the noise regs. We're confident that all of those, this recommendation has been compiled rigidly, all of the very measures that the applicant's own acoustics consultant has said would be necessary to meet the regs. But of course, that does not provide a guarantee that other people may not hear noise and may not be happy with it.
Just one of the requests, may I ask if council can have a copy of that environmental noise assessment?
Mr. Mayor, absolutely, I'll provide to all councillors.
Any other questions, councillors? Then please note that there are 3 written deputations also on the same item, one from Sharon Reynolds, one from Julianne Fitzgerald, and one from Locke. The first 2 were not in support, and the last one was in support. That now takes us to part C, council predominant notice of motion on Weir Park, it's on page 551, and we have in-person deputation starting with James Apollo. Thank you, James. You'll have 5 minutes once you start speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, CEO. Is it on?
No.
Mr. Button. Yep. On now.
Good evening, I'll cut it short. I'm here tonight to support Councillor Godolphin's notice motion to get a risk assessment done by the city's insurers, LGIS, I believe, on the Wood Park playground. To provide context, I understand a resolution was made by council on the 14th of December to investigate modifications to the play equipment at Wood Park in response to safety concerns by members of the community. At the last council meeting, I believe a motion calling for modifications to the playground equipment to be considered as part of the 2023-2024 mid-year budget review was defeated, and the council results were effectively waited and see. I think the wording was monitor Wood Park, with no further action recommended at this stage. What concerns me, and the reason why I'm speaking tonight, is that around that time, I think it was around the 10th of May, thereabouts anyway, an incident occurred at the park involving a mother of a young child who has sustained an injury, apparently fractured her leg. Now, the park itself was funded independently of taxpayer funds, making any modifications a relatively small cost to taxpayers compared to the price tag of well over $1 million already spent on the park. In fact, if the Midland Oval redevelopment plan is left to run its course, it will create an income stream that includes more rate payments that could certainly easily fund modifications in any case. But this is not my immediate concern with regards to the motion for a risk assessment. What concerns me is the liability of the council to any claim related to the most recent incident in question and to any subsequent claims. I'm sure that arguments will be made, and I think they may already have been made, that because the equipment has been deemed safe by an independent review, that there's no need for council to intervene and act. Well, I answer this by saying that by building this park with the playground equipment, the City of Swan has effectively invited a class of persons or classes of persons to come to use the facility for recreational purposes. Now, according to the officer's comments from the meeting on the 10th of May, I understand that it's been constructed in a way that exposes children to a level of risk in a controlled environment, providing an opportunity to develop hand-eye coordination, core strength and balance. I'm summarising that, and all commendable goals. The report goes on to say that exposure to risk is beneficial to development. I don't think the report specifically said what area of development, but I'll accept that face value. That it's a good thing. But I note that there is a caveat in that the risk should be low level and not likely to result in serious injury. So that accepted risk should not be, it should be a low level risk and not to be likely resulting in serious injury. Well, it happened. It appears that a serious injury has occurred, and not to the class of persons identified in the report, not namely children, but to a class of persons that the report has not taken into account, and that being a parent. Now, I realise that an independent review of the playground equipment is found suitable for public use, and I'm familiar with the concept of obvious and inherent risk under the Public Liability Act. I think it's Division 4, recreational activities. I looked it up, Section 5E, Section 5J, and I'm aware of how this applies with respect to the duty of care with regards to parks and playgrounds, the responsibilities of local government. What I'm saying, however, is that the above, or what I've just explained in terms of the Act, is not a catch-all application of responsibility. The City of Swan still has a duty of care to all users, including the parents of children who have used the facility and possibly others. Furthermore, I submit that from what has been identified by others on social media and from my own personal inspection of the equipment, there are risks that make it likely that serious injury might occur. In some respects, it doesn't appear to be fit for purpose. I refer to the end of the slide, the angle of it, and the hole in the wall with a drop of a couple of metres. Given the possibility of civil action this raises, the City of Swan and this council should be concerned not only for the safety of members of the community, but to possible costs to ratepayers who may be forced to fund litigation to defend claims, possible insurance premium blowouts as a result of any such claims. To me, it would have been better to have agreed to make modifications when called for, but that horse is bolted. The next best step, as far as I can see, is to have an audit done of the equipment by an insurer to identify the extent to which the City of Swan may be liable and to act on any such report to remedy the situation and to mitigate any risk that may prove unsafe and costly going forward. Waiting for a claim to be made does not mitigate that risk. Councillors, after all the effort it's taken to get the Midland Oval development plan off the ground finally, now is not the time to sit on your hands. Wood Park is integral to the plan and it should be done right. I personally fought hard for the Morn to go ahead and not prepared to sit by and accept complacency. If you believe in Midland, you should not adopt a wait and see mentality. You should act now for the safety of the community and the interests of
Thank you,
ratepayers.
Mr. Pollard. That's your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker on the same motion. I've got a question, Mr. Pollard, thank you. I'll come back down. You've got a question, Councillor Bowman?
Thank you. Just the first question, and thank you for your deputation.
You're welcome.
Just checking, are you qualified in playgrounds with trade standards?
Why would I be?
Okay, fantastic. Do I get from your deputation the main concern you have is the liability issue for the city?
No. The safety of the users of the playground as well.
Okay.
Yes, and for the general reputation of the area and for the integrity of the Middle Dover redevelopment plan.
And you mentioned an incident that happened there.
I did.
And are you aware that that claim was denied?
I am.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Richardson, you're next.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Pollard. Sorry, I have a question for you.
Not that I'm not keen to answer your questions, it's a little bit tardy on your response.
I imagine you live, or I'm not sure, live in the vicinity near the park. And do you use the park regularly?
Well, I'm almost 60. My children in their late 20s.
That was
Yeah,
my question.
yeah.
Do you have
So I think I can manage. I think I'm quite fit and healthy. I think I enjoy
do you
it.
have children that use the park or grandchildren?
No, is that an important aspect of my
No, just
education?
wondering if you regularly use the park or you attend it regularly.
No, but plenty of other people do.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And I just wondered, when was the last time you visited the park?
I think so, a week ago, possibly 2 weeks ago.
So have you actually used the slide?
Well, it's dangerous, so no, I'm not getting on it. Have you?
No, I have.
Thank you.
You see the angle of that slide?
I have.
Really?
I have visited the slide.
Yeah.
I have 4 children
Yeah.
have been on the slide and,
Sure.
I was just wondering if you.
Yeah, rest assured I was there. There were lots of parents there. and
That's okay. No, I just wanted to know if you've used the slide and if not, how many times, but obviously you haven't tried the slide, so I just thought about.
No, I'm not going to try the slide until it's possibly modified.
Any other questions, Mr. Pollard? Then I thank you for your attendance and your deputation. The next speaker on the same item is Di Ryder. Thank you, Di. Once you start speaking, you also have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, good evening, councillors. My name is Di Ryder. I'm an elder and community volunteer and a ratepayer of the city's wildlife government area for the past 40 years, having bought my first home in 1982. I'm here to support Councillor Prodovnik's motion regarding the safety concerns about the playground at Wheat Park, and the council resolve the matter hopefully by getting a risk assessment done. I've been told by many families that visit the park that their children have been injured and feel that the slide and the climbing wall are very unsafe and no longer use Wheat Park because of this. I myself would not take my grandsons there, aged 4 and 5, because of my own concerns for their safety. Wheat Park has replaced an area that was not used effectively and was an eyesore with shopping trolleys and rubbish scattered all over the place, and was a meeting place for a lot of people. The design was well thought through and planned and created a beautiful green space within Midland. But until the safety standards for the site has been lifted so that our children are safe, then it will go back to being a basic space, because myself and other families will not risk serious injury to their children. Although it appears the side and climbing wall have both been constructed according to the Australian standards, I urge the city to take a risk assessment done to ensure our families that their children are safe at one available playgrounds. Not to do this would be irresponsible and it would be devastating if the child is permanently disabled because of an injury sustained at Wheat Park. Thank you. I also have an email from Sandra Reeves, if it's okay to read that out tonight.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If you can do it within 5 minutes, I'll be very happy.
I will try, I'll rush.
Off you go.
Thank you. So from Sandra, she says, good evening, councillors. A majority of you will know me, but some of you may not. My name is Sandra Reeves and I'm a resident of Stratton. I work in Midland. I'm on numerous school and community boards. I'm a local volunteer and a respected community member, but most of all, I'm a mother of 4 children, and they are the main reason that I'm writing this email. It is to ensure that my children and other children's safety is valued by the City of Swan. Safety is something to me that is of the utmost importance. And then she offers her apologies for not making it tonight, but because of prior commitments. And also thank you for being able to let her email be read out. I would like to express my concerns that I have at safety at Weed Park in Lytton. Whilst I welcome the park as a whole, I'm concerned over the safety of the current slide and rock wall. I know numerous families that have either had their children receive injuries from the slide in question or have very close incidences of their children being hurt while using the equipment. In fact, my own children have hurt themselves using the slide and we no longer use the park for that reason. I've had many people complain to me either personally or via social media about the safety of the slide, and most of us have all come to the conclusion that it is a major lawsuit for the City of Swan just waiting to happen. Although I however like to think that the City of Swan is very proactive, and instead of waiting for someone to seriously hurt themselves using the slide, that the councillors listen to us, general public, and raise a motion to get the slide safety audited as well as the rock wall. We are talking about children getting hurt. We are talking about the safety of people. Would you let your own children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews go down the slide and feel confident about it? Please ask yourself that question. I'm more than happy to go back to community and gain letters from people about the slide and the safety issues. I have no doubt about the community's concerns about it. I'm confident to say that even a local poll will prove to you that it hardly gets used due to safety reasons. Once again, I'm not asking for the park to be removed, but I'm here to argue that the city has an obligation to people to keep safe. Thank you for listening to my email. Warm regards, Sandra.
Thank you, Di. I'll ask if there's any question. Councillor Richardson first.
Oh, thank you very much for that. I just had a question. If the council did vote to have it audited and it was found that it was unsafe, what would you like the city to do?
Found it unsafe to rectify the situation.
So what would you recommend then to rectify it? Would you like us to spend some more money to redesign the playground or take it down?
I'd love to take it down.
Councillor Richardson, I don't think it's fair to ask that
Well, it
question.
is, because the person has asked for a measure to be
council
made.
to decide once we get the risk assessment done.
But the community is allowed to respond to say what they would like to see done then.
Well, how do we know until we get the risk
I said
assessment?
if there's there's an outcome, yes or no, what would the community like for us to do? And the event.
Follow the advice of the risk assessment.
Well, for me personally, to fix the problem, I mean, there's no point having it there if it's going to injure our children. And we're not going to take the chance of doing that. I wouldn't take my grandsons there. I wouldn't take other kids there if I knew that something was going to happen. Personally, I think that if it's not doing what it should be doing, we've got to find a way to fix it. It's cost a lot of money, whether it's a grant or whether it's been donated. The situation, we need to fix that situation so it could be used. It's no point in just sitting there if people are too frightened to use it, because if you're too frightened, at the end of the day, like you said, you've got 4 children. Would you take your 4 children there if you'd known that the 10 previous children that have been there injured themselves? Me personally, I wouldn't be doing that.
I make a risk-based assessment as a nurse and as a parent, and I have 4 children, so it comes up
Have you got
to
a question
the children. So yes, I would take. She asked me if I would take my children. So I'm answering the question.
But then you're risking your children for something that may be happening or may, we don't know that.
Assessment.
Thank you, councillors. I remind you, this is the opportunity to ask questions.
She asked a question.
No.
She did. She asked me, would I take my
And
children?
I'm saying, councillor Richardson, for all councillors, this is the opportunity for councillors to ask questions of the deputies, not deputies to ask questions of councillors. Councillor Bowden, you're next. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned that, people have been injured.
Yeah.
Do you know if any of them put a claim in or a complaint?
I'm not sure, but I know there's a lot of things happening in the community. I think the fact that they're not going back there is the reason. I'm not sure how many have put in, but I've been told that none have been put in. And maybe it's just the fact that they just don't like the bureaucratic. That goes with it, I suppose.
And why do you support it being done by the city's insurers and not another organisation?
Whoever can do the job to make sure the risk assessment's done so that it's there so our kids are safe. I don't really care who does it. It could be Joe Blow up the road, as long as it's done so that the risk assessment is done properly and gives a result where, find out what the problem is.
And final question, you don't have to answer it. Do you allow your grandchildren to ride scooters?
What sort of scooters?
Scooters, like the push scooters, any types of scooters.
Yes, I do, okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Being no other questions, I thank you for coming along, Guy, making your deputation and reading the deputation out on behalf of Sandra Reeves, and you're well under the 5 minute
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
mark. Councillor Bowman, question to start?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you to the relevant staff, does our LGIS provide a risk assessment for free, and if not, how much is it expected to cost?
Mr. Coden?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my understanding is that it's not free, there would be a cost. I'm not sure how much it would be in this occasion, but they would normally quote us the price beforehand.
And next question, Mr. Mayor, just wanting to confirm the claim that was put in was denied by our insurers because we had no liability, is that correct?
I have no knowledge of any claim put in, so I can't answer it. Mr. Copeland, have you got any knowledge?
That's what I've been advised.
And Mr. Mayor, just to refresh my memory, when this item came up, a very similar item came up at last month's council meeting, the question was asked, have there been any complaints or claims? And my understanding is the only one that had been submitted to the council, or was being submitted, was the one that now has been denied. Is that still correct?
Mr. Copeland, for you, personally, I've got no knowledge of any claims.
I'm not aware of other claims to our insurer. There have been a number of complaints that have been received by the city since its inception in terms of emails and things like that. I don't have the figures to hand of claims. I'm aware of this.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Henderson?
So in regard to an insurance claim being denied, the applicant for the claim would have a right to pursue in the court against it.
Well, they can take further action, councillor Henderson.
Yeah, just want to be short, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Thank you. It takes us to item 6.3. Any other councillor who have questions in regard to any other items on the agenda? Councillor Knight, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. In the confidential sector, I'm not going to.
I'll just make sure, if you're going to refer to confidential folder, that you don't ask anything of confidential nature or requires confidential answer, because we're still in an open meeting.
Yeah, there's no sensitive information. It's just, question is, since the last meeting, have any of the people on this list been contacted, or have they agreed to go into any kind of arrangement with the city to pay rates? Default.
Reg, Mark, can you help us on that question?
Through you, Mayor, yes, there has been an update that was provided through the CEO to council, so there has been.
Do you know when that update was provided?
Thank you. That would be the generic update provided to all elected members as far as I'm aware, Mr. Mayor. However, there have been a number of parties who have reached a settlement or some form of arrangement, and I'll ensure those details are circulated to you tomorrow.
Is that the only question you had, Councillor?
Will they come off the list then? Those ones that have been in the arrangement?
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Through the chair, there is a draft alternative recommendation to deal with 3 of those parties, one of whom has reached an arrangement with us, 2 of which are promising to reach an arrangement with us. So there will be an alternative coming through to deal with an extension for those 2 parties for another 2 months to allow them to either make good on that or not.
Thank you.
Councillor Podolny, you're next. So I can't hear you and no one else can hear you.
Can we please, through you, Mr. Mayor, can we please get an update on the Wetland property and the Bullsbrook property?
Yes, I think the fair of the 3 mentioned by the CEO. Well, then you have to liaise with the appropriate staff and give the addresses and get an update. Councillor Henderson, you were next.
So items, questions, councillors, in regard to, the public art, matter, we've circulated some proposed changes. Can staff, advise, and, perhaps Mr. Coden might need, some notice on this, what, additional, workload it might entail, and whether, and what methods can be utilised to perhaps mitigate that, workload in respect of reducing reports to council.
Mr. Curtin?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I will circulate some more detailed information. There would be a considerable workload for council in doing a report to council every time we put through a public art or dispose of any. And at the moment, we normally raise those issues at ward meetings with the ward councils, but it would add a considerable number of council reports to the agendas. So I will provide some further information.
So pending that, I may or may not have an alternate for that item, Mr. Mayor. The other one I had a question on is 2.1, which is page 151. In respect of telecommunications policy, telecommunications facility mobile phones, on page 166, I'll probably need to discuss this with Mr. Vanderlyn in respect of new technologies and microcells and things like that. So again, I may have a question on whether or not that should be included.
Yeah.
And the other question was on the adoption of local area plan for Swan View, which is on page 274. Will staff review the map that's shown there on commercial facilities and update the intersection of Farrell Road and Morrison Road, because obviously there's a large shopping centre there now, and that's not shown on the map.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Raise those items next. Next one was Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so a question about 6.4, page 371, the property number 2. It says, in November 2022, the city received information that the owner is currently incarcerated. So is that hearsay information, or is it as a result of making an inquiry with whichever department blocks people? Is that information is available to be asked for?
Thank you.
Sorry, councillor, would you be able to repeat the question, please?
Yeah, well, in the confidential section, we have the name of the person, having verified with the, whatever, Department of Justice, that they have that person in one of their correctional facilities.
Yes, I believe we have confirmation. I'm not 100% sure whether it's from a department, but it is from reliable sources that we have confirmation that they have been incarcerated.
Well, that's the question about the only reliable place to go to is the Department of Justice, who do provide that information service. So we'd have to come from there. So that's the kind of certainty that we need, I think. So can we get that for council?
Yes, I think we take that on notice.
Thank you. Can I carry on to?
You got another question? Please do so.
Yeah, I think it's section relating to the proposed changes to the procedural lateral work section 7.1. Question is the public submissions all, without exception, object to reduction in reputations.
Can you turn your microphone on, please?
In 7.1, the public submissions up, I believe without exception, all reject the notion of reducing public speaking time for people making deputations and reject the notion of council speeches being reduced from 3 minutes to 5 minutes. So have the staff ignored that, or how are we taking that into account?
Thank you, Ms. Hodgson.
Staff have ignored it, but staff has acted on. Councillor, it's not that staff have ignored those comments, staff have responded to the direction from council that we proceed to adopt the meeting procedures that were approved by council back in
First of June.
Thank you.
But I've not amended it since then. What it seems to say in the report.
There have been some minor amendments, but more of those have been more clarifications just to ensure that there isn't any confusion, but it's entirely up to council. If you want to change the timing, that's entirely at your discretion.
So I guess the other question is, it's pretty clear what the public think of the idea of reducing public participation and reducing our ability to speak up on their behalf. What about Mr. Fraser, who was making these recommendations? Is he still with the department?
So this is my knowledge, yes, he is.
Thank you.
Councillor Catalano, you're next.
Thanks, yes. With 6.4, is that basically a caveat in those properties? We're going to be a caveat on those properties? Or what's going to happen? Basically, what's going to happen? Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will have to take that question on notice and get back to you. Yeah, because, you know, the amounts outstanding not in any way, relative to the value of the property. So, curious to know what you're going to do if that's passed through. If you might emailing me, please. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowman, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I know with 2.1, we actually haven't done a real good review of the policy. Now, I know that staff are in a catch-22 because the review timeline was up for this. Is it better not to properly review the policies and just put them through with no changes, or are we better noting that they'll be done in 2 years' time or 12 months' time?
Mr. CEO and Mr. Henry.
Thank you. Noting that we have to abide by council's policies, and when council in its own policy has a statutory review time of 2 years, which allows us to bring the policies back at that time. Now, we have endeavoured to go through and do that. When I looked at this over the last couple of months, I just made the observation we have a large number of policies out of date, and there has not been a proper structured process to do it, which is what I'm trying to do for the moment. If I was to give any guidance, Mr. Mayor, I'd say if you want to make a simple change, most of these policies are all low risk. Now, if we didn't have a 2-year time frame, we'd do them once every 4 years and allow a structured approach to deal with it. Because the policy says 2 years, unless we go through and strike that out, we're just forced to bring this back to you with what resources we can apply at the time.
There's the answer.
Yep. My next question, Mr. Mayor, is regarding 6.1. There's a number of projects there where we've significantly over committed, spent more than the budget. And one close to my area, which I hear about from my ratepayers all the time, is Nangower Road, had a $3.7 million expenditure and $2.1 million budget. My understanding, we've spent that extra $1.6 million or committed to that. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mr. Coe.
The majority of the money is spent or committed. There is still some further expenditure to occur.
And Mr Mayor, follow-on question from that. When council adopts a budget that has $2.1 million for a project, when does staff have to come back to council to ask for more money before spending it or committing to it?
Thank you. I know Councillor Barman, I think already been provided a recommendation on this matter today, but what the rules under of section 6.8 provide. So where there's not an additional use, it's being required for the additional funding. So the subcontractor to continue to use the resources we have to deliver the project approved. We have agreed with you for my time that it will be a structured process to come back and bring necessary budget reviews in order to facilitate that. One of the things council wanted to get away with from a monthly budget adjustment process to facilitate minor changes to the budget. So we're doing that on the basis of 4 times a year. This one is essential. What it does is to tidy up all the allocations for the end of the financial year, and more importantly, help us leave a closing position as close to an actual position as possible.
Mr Mayor, we obviously heard from the CEO we're going to do it 4 times a year. How come we're the only local government that I'm aware of in the Big Ten that do it so frequently and the other local governments only do it once? Have they got a different budgeting process?
Well, I can honestly say from the last 2 local governments I've worked in, we didn't do it once, we did it more frequently than that. In fact, at Canning, we would do it every 3 months as required. But you have statutory requirement to do a minimum of 1 budget adjustment each year. That's the mid-year review. We do it 4 times a year to pick up the first period of the year, which is when you then are in September and you're dealing with any unknown contingencies that happened after the budget was first presented. The mid-year budget review, and in this case, 1 final budget adjustment in order to allow for a good closing position, that is a closing financial position, as close to the accurate dollars we currently have.
And Mr Mayor, I do know that I did get responses to a number of my questions, but I haven't had a chance to look at all of them. Mr Mayor, in 6.2, there seems to be, I don't know, it's just this month, lots of invoices for what I would call refreshments. Is there a policy on refreshments at this council?
CEO,
yes, my understanding there is, but management practice adopted for the provision of refreshments when they can and they can't be provided. So they're not allowed to be purchased.
And final question, and it's regarding 6.5. There seems to be a number of projects that, in the staff's own words, were completed last year that we've only just received invoices. Obviously, staff to be required to raise purchase orders. Is there a process that we need to improve on to ensure we capture those invoices that have not been received and not wait until 11 months throughout the year?
Thank you. Yes, and through the final certification process, the aim is to have the finalisation of years in the council which they're presenting. Every now and then, and it is very exceptional, an agency will come back, another party will come back, so we fail to invoice you for works that weren't taken on your behalf, and we're presented with a legitimate claim. I think this one related to some service work that was done by a third. But it's unfortunate fact of life when you're paying tens and tens of thousands of invoices despite the best debits. Sometimes, we even get claims from councillors for mileage allowances that don't relate to the period of the year we were in, and you might pay them in the subsequent year or even a later period of that.
So, just the other part of my question is, we raise purchase orders for all our purchases. Yes?
Yes, we do raise the purchase order for each purchase. But remember, the purchase order is the estimate of what the cost will be. And in case the final cost will only come through the attribution of all the invoices. You may think you've closed the job, we've closed it off, we've had some savings in that particular job, and then 6 months down the track, an agency will say, well, just realised we failed to invoice you for these costs. If I give you one example that happened in the city of Coburn, we received an invoice 3 years after, really, a number of other local governments where Western Power had failed to properly invoice us for the electricity costs used on the light bulbs because they didn't have the appropriate technology in place to tell us how much electricity cost. Suffice to say, in that particular authority, we negotiated a very good outcome that didn't involve paying all of Western Power's costs.
David, councillor Dunn. Thank you, councillor Dogny. You're next.
Yeah, I just want to seek some clarification following on from councillor Catalano's questions. From what I understand with the sale of land item, is it 6 point, whatever it is, we had put caveats on all of the properties very early on in the stage. Can someone confirm that before it gets to the sale stage very early on?
I think the question is going to be taken on notice, and the answer will be provided for all councillors, hopefully tomorrow. Councillor Johnson, you had another question?
Yeah, thanks. Just looking through the budget adjustments, I see on page 384 that the city's got quite a number of projects that have come in on the budget, which is really good. If you look at the one on the table on 384, well done, Mr. Copeland and his staff. But I've got a question again about this late invoice business. I noticed Albert Street, it says revised budget $6,700. They just required $106,830. Proposed budget obviously significantly higher, and it says, as the project team did not receive the invoice within sufficient time, PO delivery processes, etc., and we've got the next financial year. Now, I seem to recall that it's standard project management practice in the project management deep knowledge, which is the world of PMI. As you close a project, you write to all the suppliers, contact the suppliers, and ask them, have you got any more invoices? We are closing this project budget in 2 months' time. We need your invoices. Does the city have that practice, standard project management practice?
We do contact suppliers and chase them up on invoices, but not on all jobs. We've got over 400 capital projects, and often we've got numerous subcontractors, etc. And so certainly on the larger ones, we do follow up with them. But there are, and sometimes people say yes, all the invoices are in, and then they'll find something that comes in afterwards. So we do deal with many purchase orders, and the percentage that do come in late is very small, but there are some.
I would have thought that was the project management responsibility, though, to say to the suppliers on the project manager should, according to the methods I'm aware of, ask the suppliers to do that project, have you submitted your final invoice? If not, get it in by this day, or we will pay it. Would that not be a good practice?
We do chase up on them. Legally, we're not in a position to tell them that we're not going to pay it if it comes in late.
Yeah, I guess then the next question is, if we're looking down here, district required, we're seeing all these projects that have come in on the budget. Is it possible that the reason they're apparently in the budget is because the final invoice hasn't arrived and we're going to find out next year? Is that likely or unlikely?
I think it would be unlikely.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for that. Just getting back to good old 7.1 meeting procedures, local law. I see that I've got here. I've just checked. Mr. Fraser is still doing the same job at the Department of Local Government, but we've got 17 people who don't agree with him. So, would it be a good idea for the city to contact Mr. Tim Fraser and ask him to come in and make a public statement as to why he thinks these changes are a good idea? So we hear both sides of the argument. So, can the city ask him if you'd like to attend?
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, we could all ask it, but at this point in time, the meeting procedures is what not much like Mr. Carter, but Mr. Fraser thinks it's what the two members of council think is the appropriate outcome.
Sure, he's kicked it off. It'd be good if he could come along and tell us why it's a good idea. Can we ask him?
Yeah.
I can ask him if he wishes to against that.
Make a statement.
Not sure where it within the scheme, the order of council business, but
Public statement, Tom.
possibly.
So he's got his 2 minutes.
I'll ask if there are any other questions on any other items answered. Being no further questions, I declare this agenda forum shut at 2 minutes past 8. I thank everyone for their attendance and their contribution. Thanks. Have a good evening.
I've got it.